Hello, everyone. Welcome to VMN Business Talk. Today, we are diving into a very powerful topic that we think doesn't really get enough stage time, and that is strategic partnerships and how they can transform your business's impact. If you'd like to catch up on our past episodes covering business and marketing, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, and YouTube. Just look for VMN Business Talk. We truly appreciate your follows, comments, and likes. They help us bring even more valuable conversations your way. My name is Diana Spinka. I'm the producer of this show. And as always, I'm here with our host, networking and marketing expert, Victor Nichols. Hello, Victor.
Hello, can't wait to get into this one.
We're thrilled to welcome today's guest, Lindsay Schambach, Executive Director of the incredible nonprofit Imagine, a center for coping with loss, a rock star and visionary leader. She's grown their annual event from 500 to 1,800 attendees, increased the newsletter open rate from 19% to 66%, and last but not least, partnered with the New Jersey Department of Education to help change the law, making New Jersey the first state in the union to teach students about grief and loss in schools. Lindsay, this is all about you, and I'm sure that it's just a little portion. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much for dedicating your time to share your experience with us. Please tell me how you started from your career from being a teacher to becoming a leader at such an important organization.
Well, thank you both so much for having me. This is an incredible topic to talk about partnerships, and they mattered in the classroom when I was a classroom teacher in the city of Newark, New Jersey, and they matter as much now. So I started my career teaching fourth graders in Newark and loved every minute of it. My friends used to joke that I was never going to leave the classroom. But life and passion and purpose all just met in this really beautiful chemistry that was both painful but also filled with a plan. So I lost my father my first year of teaching. I was 21 years old and he died of a glioblastoma. And I saw loss and I saw the way it impacted our students. And I spent the next 6 years as a teacher, 5 years as a principal in the city of Newark, and loved growing a school, growing a culture for children and families where they could be their best selves. And then in 2017, my own husband was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. And I had a 4-year-old son. And when he passed, I had a 4-week-old daughter at the time. And what I thought I knew about grief and loss and the ways to support children was just inadequate. And so now I have the opportunity to lead this organization that is really focused on supporting children and families directly with loss, but also supporting communities that want to be wonderful people, that want to build a culture, that want to make the world a better place. I get to support them in thinking about how grief shows up in their world and how they can utilize their role in our universe to make the lives of children just a little bit better.
Mhm.
That's powerful right there, and I mean that's it. You know,
I,
what
I
better
think
reason to do something, right?
I, I think one of the coolest things was I used Imagine services myself. So in 2018, when Mike died, I didn't know what to do or where to go. And Imagine was a center before I got there. I was able to drive down 22, go to Mountainside, and every other week, my son and I went to program. And what I found myself doing, even in the midst of my grief, was dreaming about all the things that would make everyone's lives better. I
Mhm.
dreamed of a widow's retreat. I dreamed of workshops where I would get to learn how to manage my own grief and manage the grief of my children. I dreamed of workshops for like parents of my friends' kids so that when I realized my husband died, I realized that my friends' children also lost someone. And those parents didn't know what to say to their own 5-year-olds and their own 6-year-olds, my nieces and nephews. And I started dreaming about all of that, even in the walls of a grief support center. And then it just so happened that 3 years later, when COVID hit, and I was the managing director of leadership development coaching schools during this time, Former widow friends of mine from Imagine called and they were like, Imagine searching for a CEO, you should apply. And I remember looking at the job description and being like, I don't know anything about development. I've never had to fundraise before. And I said, you know what? I'll help them find the right person. um,
That was a smart
I'll be a part of the search committee. You know, I care about this organization. And I just heard a board member say that at that point, when I met the head of the search firm called the board and said, we have your person. You should stop searching. The job now is convincing her to take this job. And I remember speaking to my families in the city of Newark, saying to them, how would you all feel if I go and take this job? This is a job that I believe I could bring purpose, but only if the city of Newark also really wants it. And the parents at the time said, like, when you dream bigger, you show us that we can dream bigger too. Go out and do this. And I have a tendency to keep in mind the people who have been with me for my career, that we think about doing all of this work. It's funny, the
Mhm.
topic today is partnerships,
Yes.
because that was the head of my PTO at the time who I called, and he was a reference for me for my new job. So I've been here at Imagine now almost 5 years. I'm about to start my fifth year.
Wow. That's one heck of a story. I mean, that is one heck of a story. I think one of the things too, and then we'll get into the partnership part of it, but is when you have this is the kind of thing that you want everyone to know about because you don't know when you're gonna need it. And that because people who may see this or yeah, they're like, well, this is kind of neat and this is kind of cool, but this doesn't apply to me, right? Because it doesn't apply to you this moment
Right now.
right now. And then they're going to be like, when it happens, because it does happen, they're going to be like, wow, I am so glad I saw that. I read that there's an organization like this and they can reach out. And I think that's why one of the reasons why stuff like this is so important because you don't need it until you need
I
it.
say it all the time that I am so grateful. Every chance I get, I say thank you to the founders. Thank you to the board who served before me. Thank you to the volunteers because you did all the hard work, not
Mhm.
even knowing my family was going to cross your path someday. And
Right.
that's the beautiful thing, is like creating something out of your own experience of loss for others. It's like the true paying it forward. Our founders started Imagine because they didn't have it when they needed it.
Right.
And so, they sort of did it, for themselves. It feels good to do
Mother of
good.
what? Mother of invention, right?
Yes, necessity is the mother of invention. And I think, when you have gone through life experiences and you are able to transform that into what you choose to do with your time and your talent and your passion, that's what's remarkable. And building a team, doing this, allowing people to share the truth of their story, even when it's painful, even when it's, I didn't have this, I wish I had that. That's what creates the vision of this more beautiful world that would have all of those things in it for everyone.
Right, right, right.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
So it feels like it meant to be, you know. Um when you got the position, where did you start? Like what was your first goal maybe to, because I know probably like getting from your personality that you had lots of ideas in mind, but you needed to focus on something first to grow, because the goal for the organization as a nonprofit is also always to get more sponsors, to grow, get more volunteers, to
Yeah.
like to improve in so many ways, like, like any other business. Where did you start?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm definitely a little bit of a type A kind of person. I'm goal oriented and achievement oriented. But what Imagine taught me and my previous experiences was that the first thing I had to do was listen and learn. I had to listen and learn what was different about running a nonprofit and especially running one in the grief space. So really, I spent my first 6 months just trying to unpack what was my own personal experience and how was that different or similar from the experience of others who were grieving. I had to make sure that like I wasn't just basing all of my decisions and vision on my own experience. And so I did a lot of listening, a lot of observing, a lot of time with our founder, why this, and like coming from a true place of curiosity, Tell me about it. Why is this our model instead of this? How come you chose to do this? Why is the name Imagine? Like there was no question off the table. Um, and then I remember being asked to write a strategic plan. And I was like, I can't really do that yet. I can't write a strategic plan because I don't know how fast we can go as an organization. I don't know my people well enough yet. I don't know the field well enough. I don't know the desire of the community well enough. And so instead of a strategic plan, I wrote a 10-year vision. And I said, in 10 years, here's what I want the world to be like. And one of the things that was on that vision was we said that I believe that in school, every child should have the opportunity to learn about grief and loss. It's the one common uniter. We will all experience loss in our lives, right? Death is a part of life. And so we don't talk about it anywhere as a part of a formal education for children. So
Mhm.
I said, in 10 years, that's one. And I said, in 10 years, the other thing that will be true is that no child will be more than 30 minutes away from like life changing, free peer to peer support. And so that means that growth is a part of our vision in the next 10 years.
Growth
And
and
so
availability. Sure.
say it again, Vic.
I said growth and availability to right to have the services available for what it is that you need.
Yep, growth and access, right? So once I wrote a 10-year vision, then I got down to, okay, so what do I need to do now? And so we had to really unify the community on a vision first. Does everybody agree with this? Is this where we're headed? And so that was really part of the first year was getting people on board with the direction that I believed the organization should be going. In my role, my job is vision setting. It's deciding what we're going to do and how quickly we're going to do it. And then in a nonprofit, you have to make sure you have the support of the board, the support of your staff, the support of your volunteers, and your families. And so that's when I set out socializing that idea with everyone. And then we got down to work.
And
Oh,
I'm so glad you mentioned the idea of it being a nonprofit. Okay, because nonprofits sometimes make that assumption that their mission is what drives their success. And I know you're probably going to agree with what I'm about to say is that if you are running a nonprofit, you have to still think like a business person.
Yeah, which is really hard for most of us in nonprofit.
Exactly. Exactly. Because when you have to have grist for the mill and you cannot espouse what it is you're trying to get out there if you don't have money and support to do it. That's
Right.
economics. Okay.
Yeah, we say no money, no mission.
There you go.
And like as someone who would spend all of my time with children and families, if you let me, um, shifting to realizing that my job was to bring in money so we could do the things that we need to do.
Bingo.
I have to be mindful of my energy and where I spend it. Sometimes what gives me energy isn't where my energy needs to be spent. So I have to build in time with kids and families so I can go do the job I'm hired to do and the job that will make sure that I'm able to reach the most children possible.
I'm so glad I wanted to bring that up because I think it's such a valuable thing and it's conversations that I have with other nonprofits that either I'm on the boards of or are clients of mine or whatever. And I have that sometimes you have to have that come to Jesus conversation. That
Yeah.
we got to start thinking about this like a business if we're going to grow, if we're going to move this thing forward.
Yeah. And
for
it can be
every
really hard.
For everyone who is listening to us or watching us live, please ask questions if you have them, because I see Matthew, you have a question for Lindsay. So go ahead. Don't wait until there is a right moment. I will find time and space between the discussion, and I will definitely read Lindsay your questions. Um, there was something that I wanted to tell. The importance of teaching kids loss and grief. Statistics says that 1 in 12 kids will experience loss either of their family member or classmate, like a close person until they turn 18. And that's 1 in 12. It's like 3 people in your class.
Yeah, you got that statistic almost perfect. So there is an organization that looks at childhood bereavement, and it says that 1 out of every 12 or 13 children in the state of New Jersey will experience the death of a parent or a sibling before they turn 18. And so we're talking about
Mm,
parents and siblings, not even a classmate or a grandparent.
Right. You're talking like,
okay.
And the number doubles. So one out of every eight people in this in actually in the US, one out of every eight people in the United States will have a parent or a sibling die before they turn 25. And so,
Oh,
we're
wow.
talking to kind of an older audience with young workforce, young employees. One out of every eight will have a parent or a sibling die before they turn 25. And so, when you're thinking about a high school classroom, two or three classmates in every classroom, when you're talking as we get to college, when our young people are exposed to freedom and choice and some questionable opportunities, when they're dealing with grief and loss and they don't realize how painful it is and the normalcy of the pain, because our culture is extremely grief averse, like we do not want to talk about it. I also say we're pretty grief illiterate, like we don't speak the language of grief well. We want it to go away. We want to put it to the side. We want to change the topic. We want to cheer people up. But there's this amazing psychologist who's been studying grief, and he always says that the only cure for grief is to be allowed to grieve, right? Like the only cure for grief is to be allowed to grieve. And so, what we have an opportunity to do is to teach young people that grief is natural and normal. It's not pathological. It is the reaction to loss. And so, when you're grieving, those painful feelings, the sadness, the anger, the isolation is normal. And what you need to be able to do is to talk about it. And so that's a huge culture shift. But I think it's a culture shift that this generation is ready to embrace. We were named the New Jersey Association of Student Council's Charity of the Year last year. And I think that's so cool because,
there's a lot of charities in New Jersey.
yeah. And what it means is that young people, these young high school leaders, picked us. And they picked us because they know that they have classmates who are grieving. They watch people pass away and they don't know what to do about it. And there's this thing, right? Like we learn how to grieve from our elders. And many of the generations before us, didn't really have the space, the time, the finances, and grief got pushed to the back burner for many of them. And so this is an opportunity for us. And I think even as business leaders thinking about the grief of our employees, I know everyone is tired of talking about COVID, but COVID threw grief into the forefront for many of us, and we had people dying at unprecedented rates in the country. And so we were all dealing with grief and loss and not sure what the rule book should be when we're supporting people in that way. And so I think it matters for us as business leaders, it matters for us in this field, it matters for us as managers, as parents, and just as like humans in community.
Yeah, I was when I was in seventh or eighth grade, sometime in school, I had my classmates die on the same year as my grandma died, and a few years later, I had my grandpa died. So, and I don't remember anyone really talking about it. It's like even in the family, we it was just like, of course they were old and they were ill and it was something that was supposed to happen, but we didn't talk through it. I don't know how it affected me psychologically just yet, but still, like as a child, I do remember I had lots of questions, like what do we even do, what do I say to my dad, because it's his parents died. So I remember I just stayed quiet, for like some time, just like to avoid any irritation from parents, just like not touching them, like not
Yeah,
talking to them.
right? Like children don't know what to do if parents aren't vocalizing what they need. And how many of us are good at asking for what we need? Like almost none of us. And when you're grieving, you're even less likely to ask for it.
Right.
And like learning that there's things called like the Grief Bill of Rights. And so part of leading a nonprofit, our services are 100% for free for any family that needs us for as long as they need us. So that's mind blowing, right? Like that
That's mind blowing. They're real. Yeah, that is mind
that means like some families are coming 4 years, 5 years, and people will say things like, God, like, shouldn't your program have worked? Shouldn't they
blowing.
not need you anymore?
Oh, wow. Wow.
And the truth is like one loss doesn't preclude you from having another. And so in your example, Deanna, you lost a classmate, then a grandmother, then a grandfather. Our young
Mhm.
people go through that. You know, they might have come for an aunt and now an uncle and then a father. And so that's cumulative grief. And what grieving people need is a space to share their stories and their experiences. And I have a wonderful friend who shared her story last year as a part of Imagine's fundraising efforts. But she said that she really feels like people need permission to grieve. They need, you're allowed to grieve here. You're allowed to tell us your story, because we're so busy as adults taking care of the bills, taking care of the house, keeping like kids going to school. Your parents might have been protecting you and not showing you their grief. And it's a misnomer that just because the person was older and they were supposed to die, that we should all be okay with it. Any loss that we are experiencing may come with grief, whether they were 83. I know people who lost their 95-year-old mothers, and although they are so happy she lived a beautiful life, they're still really sad for themselves that she's not here anymore. Um, you know, and then even when that happens to young people, it's their first experience many times with the finality of life.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And opening the conversation can be incredibly beneficial because I'm going to drop one more number on you all. But we all know that mental health is a constant conversation right now, and that suicide prevention is important work. We recently learned through this study of the JAG Institute that 1 out of 4 suicides is by a teen who is bereaved.
Mm.
Wow.
So 1 out of 4.
Wow.
So these numbers, like having data, knowing your field, really matters to me because it gives me the ability to articulate this thing that I know deep in my core. It's like I know what we're doing is prevention work. We are giving kids a space so that they feel like when they were in the darkest moments of their lives, they had an outlet, they had a space to speak. This statistic just brings to light what the consequences are of not giving this to children and adults and the trauma that gets passed on from generation to generation. When adults aren't cared for, their kids bear the brunt of that. And so at Imagine, our mission used to be no child should grieve alone. And what I realized while my own children were grieving and I was grieving was that my own kids were only going to be as okay as I was. And so we know at Imagine that in addition to taking care of the children, we have to take care of their grown-ups. We have to take care of the people around them because they're creating the culture in the family, whatever that family unit looks like. And so
Right.
things that we've built out that we continue to offer, we offer webinars for the whole community. We had a recent webinar called How to Talk to Kids About Death and Dying. Like real cool topic, right? Like you would expect so many people want to come to this. Um,
Woo! Yeah.
Woo!
Right.
Let's talk to kids about death and dying. We had 200 over 200 people in today's era sign up for that webinar, right?
That's
Like
great. Mhm.
that's that's a result of finding something that people are dying to talk about and creating safe spaces to talk about it.
and and
Um,
and, and really creating that platform that people can come and really feel safe about doing it and say, wait a minute, I'm not alone in this. This is normal, right? For me to A, want to seek it out, B, feel this way, right? It's not some kind of stigma or anything like that, which is, I'm sure, part of it too. Like, oh,
right.
suck it up, kind of a
Yeah.
thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And we say like more is caught than taught. Like
Mm-hmm.
your kids, the young people in our lives, pick up on how we handle it and taking care of and holding up the mirror on like how we process all of this is a huge part of why we do it because our kids do what we do, not what we say to do.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to show a little bit of vulnerability to show our kids that it's okay to be vulnerable. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so
So
not the great, a difficult topic to talk about, but one that I think is really worthy to talk about. And there's this nuance of figuring out how to do it well when it's a business. You can't throw death in people's faces. You have to be mindful of the landmines you're stepping on and who's emotionally activated on these topics and what the right level of conversation is for everybody you're talking to.
And do you, when you're having, this is just a question I've had, and I meant to ask this to you sometime in the past. Do you ever have any problems with different religions, because different
Mm,
religions have different feelings about death.
yeah,
Uh,
that's a great
yeah,
question.
I've been meaning to ask it for quite some time, but this is a good forum to ask that question.
Yeah. So part of like building Imagine is involving local spiritual and religious leaders, because grief touches everyone, regardless of your own religious or spiritual beliefs. You'll lose someone you love. And every religion, we believe, really is like trying to find ways to communicate about death and dying. And so we host a leadership council, which is many local religious leaders and business leaders, corporate leaders, hospital leaders that help support Imagine. And so in my first year, I spent a lot of time just meeting with them, the religious leaders, and saying, like, tell me about your religion and what it teaches about death and dying. And we were blessed enough that we hosted a faith, spirituality, and dying workshop. And we had different religious leaders all on a panel together talking
Wow.
about their own religious points of views. And so Imagine is non-denominational. Every religion is welcome. But the unifying thing about it is that grief brings out people either start believing, stop believing, or question their belief. And there's no magic formula as to which of those things will happen for you, but it's common to have all three of those experiences, that you might feel stronger in your faith after a death, you might
Mhm,
question your faith, or you might just stop believing. And we've
mhm.
seen all of it within the walls at Imagine.
No. I,
Did those relationships with religious leaders help you grow the organization? Did you form partnerships on based on like on those relationships?
Definitely. It's kind of like thinking about your audience when you're growing your business, your nonprofit, is really thinking about like where will your clients show up? And so where do you find grieving people? Unfortunately, it's often like a death has occurred and they go to their religious organizations and institutions. Funeral directors, funeral homeowners, like those are individuals that we had to begin to build partnership with. A local cemetery was kind enough to invite me to be the speaker at their holiday party. And I was like, wait, you want me to go to a you want me to go to a funeral director's holiday party and be the keynote speaker? And I was like,
it
that
almost
is
sounds like the
one.
beginning of a joke. I mean,
Yes, yes, yes. And I'm not funny. So that was really hard. Um, but what I realized was this industry of individuals like me who were trying to ease the process of a very painful period in people's lives.
right.
And I thought back to the times I've been responsible for burying loved ones or, handling the end of life arrangements, and how grateful I was that there was this whole industry of people who did all these steps.
Right.
There was someone who helped me pick out a headstone, and there was someone who walked me through a cemetery and helped me identify the final resting place for my husband. And God, how blessed was I that there were people who chose to do that with their careers.
Yeah.
And so I just got to speak from a really genuine place of my gratitude for them, but also realize that these are people who will interact with families that need our services. And so by letting them know about what we do, we saw that they started referring families to the use of Imagine's peer-to-peer support program. And so, it was a mutually beneficial partnership in that way.
Hmm.
I just had to open my eyes enough to see that I'm not alone in this work. There are all these other organizations that complement the work that Imagine is trying to do. And my job was just to make the connections and unlock those doors.
And you have those verticals that you probably didn't even see until you got immersed in this, like you said. And these are all potential reality strategic partnerships and others that will be potential partnerships down the road, you know.
Right.
Is
Right.
your approach more emotional than, let's say, financial when you talk about partnerships with people?
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think that when we see the work for what it is, the work that we're trying to do at the core of it, that's why we're all here. And so for me, I always like a unique partnership that Imagine has recently been working on is the labor and delivery department with Overlook Hospital. Kind of a unique
Mm,
place. Like, where does
very.
this show up in a maternity ward, you know? But really, talked about like opening our hearts to our own personal experiences. And while I was delivering my daughter, we delivered her early. Um, 2 weeks early, 38 weeks. And my husband at the time was dying in the hospital room. He was 4 weeks away from the end of his life. And what I thought about was how challenging that must have been for the nurses in that room to decide, were they taking care of me? Were they taking care of my daughter who was arriving early? Or were they taking care of my husband? And if there was grief in my delivery room, there's grief in a lot of delivery rooms. People who've experienced miscarriages, now they're having a baby and their mom's not here anymore. They just lost their mom, what it feels like to be a parent. And I just thought, God, I feel like we could help the nurses and give them common shared language about the grief and loss and how to be there for patients. And I was lucky enough to share my story with the head of labor and delivery at the hospital through board partnerships and all. And she said, "You're absolutely right. We need this." And now we're going through training for all of the nurses in Overlook's labor and delivery department. What an
And that's just
amazing
the
thing.
beginning, right? That's just the beginning. How many other labor delivery departments are there? Right. I mean,
Right. Right.
Well,
And
what I do know is that I'm sitting on a stream with someone who is changing the world right now. And
no, 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 just, what is it? Maya Angelou says, when you know better, you do better. And I am very blessed to have been like, I have a friend who is 55 years old and he's going through his first funeral. His father recently passed away. And I thought, God, how lucky he is to be 55 and to have this be his first significant loss. But then I thought, I don't know that that's true. Like, I feel really lucky that I can see the world the way I do because I know how short life is. I know
mhm.
how none of it is a given. I know how tomorrow any one of us could not be here. And so my mentality is like, let's use every minute we can to do the best we can for the people we love. And for me, I have a big circle of people I really care about. And I have a really big circle of people who care about me. And the kindness that was given to me when my husband died is the kindness I try to pay forward for everybody who doesn't have a circle like the one I had.
That's where
Um,
energy comes from, right? That's where fuel comes from. Is the reciprocation, because you can't do it with only one side of that. It's not going to work.
yeah. Yeah.
so if we talk about partnerships, what do you see businesses, maybe nonprofits, maybe other businesses, because you obviously talk a lot to business leaders. What mistakes do you see businesses do when they try to form partnerships? And I'm sure Vic can collaborate on that as well. But from your perspective, Lindsay, what mistakes businesses make?
I was like, I feel like I should ask Vic because Vic has taught me a lot of what I know. So, Vic, I don't know if you want to go first.
Well, I mean, basically, I think I think one of the mistakes, whether it's nonprofit, for profit, doesn't matter, is not a clear delineation on what the partnership is actually going to be. What is, sometimes it's obvious what a partnership should be, but sometimes it's not. And building what those parameters are and being open to making sure that the parties, whether it's to businesses or individuals, are okay with the parameters of that partnership. Because what happens is, if there's a responsibility on both sides, because that's what forms a partnership, there has to be a responsibility on both sides. And what happens is that sometimes people are like, oh yeah, we're going to be partners, we're going to be partners. If there's not a clear delineation, that partnership is, for nobody's fault, is going to dissolve because there are no clear deliverables and there's no accountability. you know, you have to be accountable, and you have to say, hey, as this goes on, you're going to do this, I'm going to do this, you're going to do this, I'm going to do this. That's how you form a strong partnership. Now, that's what I'm giving you is a general framework, but I've, through the years where I've built strategic partners for other people, for companies who are partnering with other companies. And I'm like, boys and girls, I know what you want to get out of it, and I know what you want to get out of it. But if you guys are not aligned, right? If you're not having that conversation, this is going to fall apart before it gets started. So I'll just say that, and then I'll shut up, because I could talk about this. I could give you a TED talk on this one.
Yeah.
But I'm going to leave you with just that piece.
I think for me, I would say like thinking more about what you need than what they need. So like if you can't see how your service, your business, your organization benefits them, then you probably shouldn't be trying to enter into a strategic
Agreed.
partnership with somebody,
Couldn't agree more.
So like the many times that we've been successful at creating a partnership was when we really thought about what can we do that would actually benefit them. And having that be the first point of entry into the conversation, I can think about organizations that have tried to partner with us, and when I wasn't open to that, and that was a result of only really hearing about them and like how partnering with us would benefit them.
Right.
So as much as possible, thinking about, what a partnership with you would bring to that organization and really what that organization needs from you. The labor and delivery department is a good example because really it's just more work for us, but it's so important for them, and it gives them the opportunity to take better care of their staff. So really trying to put yourself in the shoes of the decision maker on the other organization. The other thing I would say is being very impersonal. Um, like if I can tell that the email is being sent to 25 other people, I'm barely reading it. I know that you don't know me and that there's like no connection here. And so be strategic. I say like, be purposeful about who you're choosing instead of really wide with your breath of casting a really wide net. So I think that's the other advice I would give.
That's that for me, what you just said, that's right on point. Right on point, because
Yeah, and
you can't do it that way where you're coming to, oh, me. That's not going to work.
And how did you create a partnership with the Department of Education? I know you have a background in education. It probably helped a lot, but like how businesses can do that to partner with the government?
That's a really unique story.
Yeah, well, we only need a few minutes of that story.
Yeah, I will say, I think building a leadership council, a group of individuals that are invested in your organization in the long term is a good goal to have, right? Like we can't do it alone. And so what Imagine did well. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah, it's breaking up a little bit. I don't know if it's your connection or our platform, but keep going.
Okay, you tell me because I know it's a little funky. Um, When I say leadership council, I mean elected officials, leaders of organizations that care about your mission, and then keep them regularly updated. Invite them in to provide perspective for you on what your organization could be doing, is doing well, how your organization is perceived in the community. That helps a lot. Like, this is a long term relationship. I wasn't setting out to try to pick somebody who was intentionally going to help us get a law passed. What I was trying to do was to cultivate a group of people who would help make sure that grieving children and families would find our services when they needed us. And then I was blessed enough to have someone ask me how they could help. And that's really the start of the grief bill. That was around being ready with a big picture vision and having thought through really the steps that we would need to go through. And so I'll tell you a unique thing on the grief bill is this is a bill that allows us to teach children grades 8 through 12 in the state of New Jersey about grief and loss as a part of their high school experience. And it's a big deal. Nobody likes to be told what to teach, but our kids are asking to learn about this. And so that's why this was something we wanted to support. The unique thing about it is there's no funding. Now, being a former educator, I know how hard it is to not have funding for something. And so what I say is like, we're not to blame that there's no funding, but it is our problem to try to solve it. And so what Imagine is doing is we are creating a curriculum that we will offer for free so that teachers don't have to go teach something that's of lesser quality because they don't have the funds to pay for it. And so these are the kinds of things that can be really hard as a nonprofit. And I think, that part on the grief bill is like understanding who you're working with. So we're working with schools. I have walked in the shoes of a teacher. I've walked in the shoes of an administrator. I've walked in the shoes of like a district level administrator. And when you can think about the challenges of the people you're serving and think about what can you do to alleviate those challenges, like when I looked at that telephone number, I know that's a school calling and it's probably an automated call. So I'll call him back.
Right.
But, that is when you're thinking of solutions for the world. I could have said, there's no funding, it's somebody else's problem. Instead, I said, like, this is within our locus of control to try to find a solution to this problem. And there are people who care deeply about it. So let me go out and find those people who want to see this done really well. So I think there's a little bit of like being bold enough to say, we'll try to solve a problem, even when it feels hard.
Yeah. And those are the ones, unfortunately, that probably need the most solving, right? the easy ones can resolve themselves sometimes. It's the hard ones that, right.
I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation some of the achievements that you and the organization got through the years about the open rate and the increased attendees on your annual event. And I want to talk a little bit about it because I guess it's like a domino, like everything is connected. And so the email open rate, how did you get from 19% to 66%? Because that's, when I told that to a few of my business people, like business friends who are business people, and they were like, this is not real. It never happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how? I wish I could be like, this is exactly how you do it. So I don't know. First, I started tracking data, right? Like, okay, making sure we're collecting all the kinds of data that I needed to know about in our organization. Like if someone could tell me how to grow followers, I'm sure Deanna, you could tell me how to grow followers. That's not something that's happening. But our newsletter is something that has been become kind of like a part of our organization. People look forward to it on a monthly basis. And I think what occurred is I started writing from a really personal point of view. So everybody who tunes into an Imagine newsletter or chooses to subscribe probably cares about grief and loss. And what everybody's seeking is to not be alone in their own grief and loss. So when I first wrote, I wrote as a way to like get to know our people. And I wrote about my own personal experiences of grief and loss. And so in our newsletter every month, we really take time to put effort into it. It's not just sharing kind of blanket information, but it's like a part of our heart and soul. Sometimes I'm featuring, a young child's story in our organization because they wanted us to, or there was a beautiful young girl who wanted to honor the 57th birthday that her father was supposed to turn. And so we told her story and she had a call to action for the community. And so I think people started reading our newsletter because it makes them feel less alone.
And it's real, right? And the other part is that it's real, right? I mean, the interesting thing about it in this environment that everybody's trying to sell somebody something, okay? You're not trying to sell anything. And I think that's refreshing, okay, on many levels, but you're providing something that's absolutely essential. And in some cases, essential that people don't even know they need, right? And you're bringing that out. So I think that that's another unique angle, of why you would you would get increased or could get increased engagement for that, because you're really not selling anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're fortunate that what we give away is always for free. um, so that helps, and I think people, we say it, we're kind of like a magnet for really good-hearted people, and like good humans find our organization, and they're looking for connectivity. So I wish I had a great answer as to how we grew it. I just over the years, and I think the intentional nature of like the team reads it, we edit together, people push me on my thoughts. I remember writing one newsletter and being like, this is crap, I'm sending you a totally new draft in like a week. So being able to self edit too, when it's like not what's worthy of your community, we hold a high bar for what we choose to put in front of them. Um, and then we invite them to things that we think that they would be interested in. It's kind of like your little boost of feel good. Like people want to feel good, and we try to give them good information in the world. So I think the unique thing about the growth of our annual event, Greta's Run, that one is a little more like intentional, and each year thinking about what do we need to do to grow this event. And so it started as a 5K. And I was in Kansas City recently, and somebody said New Jersey's the state of 5Ks. Like there's just always a 5K in Jersey. So how do you make yours stand
That's
out?
true. There is.
There's 5Ks everywhere.
There are 5Ks for everything,
Yes. Yes. And I had never been responsible for planning or organizing a 5K ever in my life. So we inherited this beautiful gift of a run called Greta's Run. And Greta's Run was started when a young girl in Westfield died in 2002. And her classmates, 10 years later, they were now 23 years old, and they said, we have to do something to honor Greta. And so 11 years after her passing, they started Greta's Run.
Wow.
They did this event, and it was small family-based event, but they raised money and they gave it away to the community. And just the spirit of it, of remembering Greta, was so beautiful. And it was them that actually reached out to us and said, we want to give this run to you. We can't do it anymore. Everybody was starting to have families and children, and dedicating their time was just too much. So the year they gave it to us was COVID. I'm like, cool year to start a 5K. But then when we came back in person, we said, okay, this is Imagine's run now for Greta. How do we make it Imagine-y? How do we make sure our mission lives in this event? And the first thing we did was we added a 1 mile memory walk. And we said, like, it's great to run, but we're going to slow down and we're going to remember everyone in our lives who have died. And we're going to give people the opportunity to purchase a lawn sign with the name of the person who died. And we're going to walk by those signs. And so, like, the mission living in everything. So, the first year we did that, it grew from 500 to 700 people. Then we thought about who's coming to this event. And a lot of the people coming had young children. And so, how do we add something that allows young children to participate in an event like this? And so, we added a kids' fun run. And it was adorable and beautiful. And kids from ages 3 to 10 years old were running through a finish line. And so, our first year we had 100 kids run. This year we had over 300 kids run, and we've only been doing this for a couple of years. So from there, we started thinking about like who in the community has a service that maybe they want to utilize space. And so we had like a psychoanalyst there. We have a wonderful local brand. We have a beautiful mom who sings in this band named Southpaw. She is the coolest mom ever. And this is this amazing country band. And so she sings for free live music from start to finish on this day. And she has a song that she wrote about grief and loss. And she sings it at the end of the memory walk as a way to remember someone in her life who she lost. And so it's the thinking about what matters to everybody and finding ways that it authentically, there are things we say no to, like, no, we're not going to do that. That's not Imagine's mission. That doesn't feel right for our organization, but these things do. And so I think that's each year it just gets a little bigger. We're not trying to like grow overnight. We've got to have sustainable growth. We joke like, will this ever be a 4,000 person run? I don't know. I don't want to lose the intimate nature of feeling like you see people, and oh, she passed. I didn't realize she died too. Or,
Yeah.
you know,
It's,
that
it's
there's some beauty in that.
that's a very interesting balance, right? That's an interesting because sometimes massive growth is not the goal, right?
Right.
Yeah. So
Right.
you've got to balance those things.
Right. It has, and we would like every year we still hold true to the loss of Greta, like
Mhm.
where this run came from, why it was started. This year we had the original race organizers come on stage and share the origination of the run, so holding true to our roots, like while growing. Honoring the people who built the organization before us is a big part of that. And so I think like if I was thinking from a business point of view, we don't then lose the people
Mhm.
who started it and
Yeah.
who were attached to
Because
the
they're still
original
connected. Yeah,
owner.
they're connected to it. Yeah.
Right. I don't know, Vic, tell me, is that the right thing to do?
Well, look, Lindsay, you seem to have the Midas touch. So I'm actually making a list of other world problems that I'm going to send to you because
Oh,
I'm so sure that you're going to be able to enlighten many people on our planet on things that
yeah.
we've done. But I do have another question about grief. Um, do you ever come across, because I know that what I'm going to say for people who are pet owners
Mm.
are going to have a feeling about. Do you get people to come to you? Because I mean, there's some people who a child has been born into a family that has a pet, and for the first 15 years of that child's life, this pet is there, and then the pet dies, or that's a loss.
It's a
However you
significant
want to slice it, that's a loss. And do you get that? Do you deal with that type of loss as well? And do you get those kind of requests?
This is very timely because on Friday, my sister lost the dog that has been with her for 15 years, Tucker. And my sister's daughter and son have grown up with this. And my own children grew up with this dog. So this is my first time as an adult losing a dog that I love.
Mhm.
And I remember thinking about like the times earlier in my life where I judged like the death of a pet or, didn't think that it was as significant. And in the grief world, we say like grief Olympics is a dangerous thing where you compare your grief to my grief and decide whose is worse.
Worse, right? Mhm.
Comparison is evil, right? It robs us of joy and connection. So in our trainings we talk about pet loss and how transformational pet loss is for families. So often it's the first loss that young people go through, and what we teach kids about death and dying often starts with what we teach during pet loss. And so I remember, I will honestly say that when my son lost his turtle, I kind of hid it from him for a little bit. I was afraid to talk to him about it because I was so scared how he was going to feel. And that's true about every loss. So we do get people who ask about it. The same lessons you learn in loss of a person can be applied to loss of a pet. And the honest conversations with kids, the honest conversations with adults, and realizing that like loss really, it's about the significance of that connection to the person who's grieving it, not to the rest of the world.
Right.
And
Not to somebody else's perception of
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. We say a lot like you can grieve people you've never met, right? Like people remember Princess Diana dying, right? Like,
Mhm.
Oh, the
uh,
list could go on. Elvis Presley, the list goes on. And celebrities, whatever. Yeah.
exactly. You can grieve for people you've never met, then you can grieve for a pet who has died.
And who's lived with you for who knows how many years, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Really, like grief can come with any loss, and sometimes even good things can come with grief. Moving, I cannot believe I thought my children were going to be so excited about their new house. They were so sad to leave the house that they were in for the first 5 years of their lives. And that's real. And so, like, with change always comes loss, and with loss can come grief. So just normalizing, that we all experience it on small micro levels and macro levels all the time.
My therapist, you're so true. My therapist used to say that when you break up with a person, it also is kind of different level, but it's also like you're experiencing a loss of a person because you don't have that person in your life anymore.
Yeah. I mean, becoming a mom or a parent, you're like losing your freedom, your autonomy. You get married and you lose your single self, like, and just acknowledging when you look back and realize, God, I've dealt with lots of losses. That's what creates resilience.
Right.
That's what creates the strength to start again, to realize that you've actually done this many times. And if I overcame that, I've overcome everything up until today.
Mhm.
So I can keep going. This is just a bigger scale.
Right.
And it can feel crushing. But what people need are grief mentors. They need people like for me, knowing other widows, watching the way they carried on, knowing that my mother raised 4 children, you know, like that helps me. And so I think even in the business world, like having other people that you can call and say, how'd you handle that problem? I have not done this alone. I am lucky in this field to have people in the grief space that I could call and ask all of the questions and go and study their model and, make decisions. And people shared like open books. And so having people in our lives who will mentor us, whether it's through grief or through growing your business, that really matters, and I think asking those questions forces or invites people to even think about how did I overcome this? How did I tackle that
Yeah.
challenge? The curiosity and from like an authentic place, without the judgment, is really a gift to be able to create for others.
That's the key right there, is without the judgment, because that can derail any part of it when there's the judgment in there.
We have a few minutes until the end of our conversation, and I want you to ask this question. And the work that you do is very emotionally challenging. How do you keep your team aligned and motivated?
Mm. That is like, it's something we've actually given a lot of thought to. Okay. So it would be a really bad thing if I was like, I don't know, I've never thought about that. So I, I have definitely thought about what do we do to make sure that those who are caring for others are being cared for. We call it a parallel process. So what we create for others, we need to create for each other. So within our peer, and that means not just the staff here at Imagine, but the volunteers. So the same support that our families get, we give to our volunteers. So our
Mm.
volunteers, after they run peer-to-peer support groups, they get with the staff and with one another, and they get to share their experience of the night.
Mhm.
They do it anonymously. We never share names, but this was challenging. I was worried about this tonight. I listened to this story and I'm upset about the way this person died, and they have to be able to do that because otherwise they'll go home and share it with their family. And, as an ED of a grief nonprofit, I have to be careful. And my kids will probably tell you I should be more careful about what I share at home because this work is really hard work. So, for staff, when we know that we're having a difficult support call or a difficult orientation with a family, we always debrief with one another. And as much as possible, we try to put 2 people on any support call, or we do something called a response in the community, which means if a death has occurred, we will grow out and create a safe processing space for young children. And we try to always put 2 people on those so that you have someone else to debrief with and someone
Mhm.
else to carry the weight of you.
Right.
So, taking care, I think the other reason in these past 4 years that we have been able to be as strong as we are is that we've cared for each other. Like, having staff in this work for the long haul, I am not in the business of churn and burn. I want staff who have been here, who have built cultural competence, like the work competence, the grief competence, because that will come with more expertise and more knowledge for our team. And so we have to care for those people. And then I think as a leader, like being vulnerable myself, like
Mhm.
acknowledging what I know, what I don't know, when I need help, when I mess something up, when I don't think something went as well as it could have, gives my team the space to say those things also so that we can troubleshoot and problem solve together. And there's also not the fear of judgment for that. If they're not judging me, I'm not judging them. Our goal is to collectively get better. So I don't know if that answers, but that's kind of our internal way of taking care of each other.
Yes, it does. I mean, you are running such an impressive organization, and you're building it, over the years. It's growing, and I'm so happy to know you, to know your journey. Is there something you want to share with the world? Maybe you want to ask people to join you on the events, to join as volunteers, or anything else that you want to share with people.
Yeah, I think I would say, like, I know that subscribe to our newsletter. Our newsletter gives opportunities for everyone wherever you are in grief. So if you're someone who's in a place where you can give and you want to volunteer or you want to donate to the organization, or if you're in a place where you need grief support and so you need resources, you want to go to the webinars, you want to come out and run our race, you want peer-to-peer support, the newsletter has all of the information on all of those ways. And you may find that you just want to bookmark it, you want to hold on to it because you don't know, or you want to refer somebody else because you know someone in your life who's going through it. There's 6 magic words that we say. There's 6. Have you ever heard about imagine? And when someone in your life is grieving, you can ask those 6 words. Have you ever heard about imagine? And that's opening a door for a conversation about peer-to-peer grief support in a way that meets them right where they are. And so our newsletter gives all those tricks and tools for you to help your community. And if you ever want to help our community, there's lots of ways for you to do that too. So we do
How do
run.
how do people find your newsletter?
On our website, you can go to imaginenj.org, scroll down to the bottom and put in your email address, and you'll start getting our monthly newsletter. And then you get invitations to all of the events and webinars and all the resources on Mother's Day and Father's Day and coping with loss around the holidays that we send out.
I have some ideas for you, Lindsay, and I'm not going to give them to you here because I have some ideas for some potential supporters of yours that you may not have thought of. So we will have a separate conversation.
That sounds great.
This conversation made me think of them. So
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for watching, and thank you everyone for listening. Vix, thank you so much for providing this space for us to bring Lindsay on a show and for her to share her experience. And I'm very grateful. I could dedicate my time and to help people know, get to know you and get to know your organization. It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you. Thank you. I've been very lucky to get to know you too as well.
Yeah, Lindsay, we have lots more work to do.
Thank you. Yeah, not all the problems of the world,
No. I won't give you all of them, but I am going to give them to you, one at a time.
One at a time, right?
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.